the PACE February meeting. Madam Secretary, could you please call the roll to establish quorum?
Director Carr is having technical issues and will be joining the meeting. Director Leonard.
Present.
Director O'Halloran.
Here.
Director Simpson.
Present.
And Chair Taylor.
In attendance.
We have 4 present.
Thank you.
We also have President Peterson joining the committee.
Thank you. At this time, we will have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Buenas tardes. Esta junta escolar se transmitirá en español para aquellas personas que lo necesiten. Para escuchar esta junta en español, por favor marque el número 312-626-6799. Repito, marque el número 312-626-6799 y ponga el número de identificación o código que es 608-130-5362. Repito, el código es 608-130-5362. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Everyone else, if you can make sure your microphones are muted.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Pursuant to Board Rule 1.06, this meeting is being conducted virtually. Board members may be participating in person from the Central Service Building. In order to allow as much public access and participation as possible, this meeting is being broadcast via live stream on the NPS website and on the NPS YouTube screen, the links to which may be found on the NPS website on the broadcast page. For each item of business, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. Individuals who wish to speak on tonight's items were required to register in advance. I ask those who are waiting on the platform to remain there until you're called upon to speak. Just as a reminder, Robert Rules of Order dictates that all comments should be directed towards the chair of the committee. Also, any questions or requests are to be directed towards the chair, who will then determine the most efficient way to address them. All speakers are asked to state their name and spell their last name before proceeding with their comments. Each speaker will have 2 minutes and 15 seconds to speak. After a speaker's time is up, they may continue to follow the meeting at one of the broadcast options mentioned previously. To ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind will not be permitted, or any appropriate language. The chair reserves the right to remove anyone engaging in such behavior from the platform. Those removed from the platform may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. However, he or she will not be allowed to rejoin the platform. Written testimony may be submitted to the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53201, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email it to governance@Milwaukee, spelled all the way out, .k12.wi.us. Also, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda, items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting the meeting's agendas and minutes page on the NPS website and choosing online agendas. Madam Secretary, what is the first item of business for tonight?
Madam Chair, before we read into the record the first item of business, Director Carr has joined the platform.
Welcome.
Item number 1 is a report with possible action regarding the data and progress associated with the Office of Civil Rights report, the OCR report. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Thank you. Will the administration please present on this item?
Chair Taylor and members of the committee, Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. The item before you this evening's agenda is a monthly report regarding the data and progress associated with the Office of Civil Rights OCR report. Mr. Matthew Boswell will provide an overview of our progress and guide us through the presentation. Upon completion, we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Mr. Boswell.
Thanks, Dr. Posey. Good evening, Chair Taylor, members of the PACE Committee. I will guide you through our monthly discipline and disproportionality updates and progress. So as always, we start off with what grounds us in our work, which is our 5 priorities for success. Next is our reporting for 2021-22. The monthly reporting associated with disproportionality for the 21-22 school year will focus on the following: promote and provide resources to schools on alternative suspension, including the alternative to suspension toolbox, work with schools to make certain counseling and supportive services are utilized, analyze and evaluate individual school data related to suspensions to determine the best course of action to address disproportionality, continue and expand district-wide book studies, and form district committees to identify, develop, and implement strategies to reduce suspensions. Update from last month. We have continued a small group conversation with community groups, a part of the code of conduct, focus groups, have continued in creating regular opportunities for staff members to practice courageous conversation about race protocols. We have continued further sessions of leads and DELC, engaging schools and district protocols, which is a leadership function of the Courageous Conversation platform, and Courageous Conversation about Race networking site with resources. Updates from last month continue. Continue to increase student voice through student focus groups on code of conduct and student discipline committees, reviewing board policies as a team, increase personal finance opportunities with pilot cohort requiring personal finance, 0.5 credits for graduation, and creation of cohort 2. Resources for schools prevention alternatives to suspension have continued the monthly update to all discipline champions, highlight strategies of verbal acknowledgement, one-on-one conversations, and parent contact, virtual learning, climate and culture best practices, returning to in-person best practices, including community building, setting expectations, and practicing in-person procedures. Continue to ensure supportive services are utilized by district discipline and disproportionality leadership team meetings, discussion of schools with most suspensions, and conducting in-school focus groups, data analysis, and creation of next steps to support positive school climate, school discipline work groups. Most common topics included discussing proper documentation, disproportionality next step, PBIS framework, and reteaching expectations. Continue to ensure supportive services are utilized by mid-year data assessment, supporting administrators on counseling as part of the discipline process in lieu of suspending students, analysis of behavior interventions data at the school level with PBIS coaches, and support for staff members assigned a classroom without prior classroom management experience. Our suspension data year-to-date, in comparison to 2019-2020, year-to-date, we had 11,812 suspensions. 2021-22, year-to-date, we have 10,458 suspensions. Below, you will see a breakdown by month of ethnicity, role identification of suspensions. January 2022 was a total of 1,182 suspensions. Next is January alternatives to suspension. These are all the steps that we're taking and all the resources that was used to prevent students from being suspended. During that month, there was 39 incidents of conference being recorded. There was 475 administrative counsels. There was 28 detentions, 28 mediations. Referral to big team was 1. Repair and harm circle was 12. The restorative conference was 6 as recorded. We will continue and expand book studies, and we will continue to hold courageous conversations about race exploration in January for 450 elementary teachers. A total of 202,635 staff members have attended Courageous Conversations training since March 1st, 2021. Leadership experience and administrative development series leads with over 150 individuals and completed push-out book cohort. District committees to reduce suspension. The Code of Conduct focus group with community organizations has taken place. Over 150 student committees have met year date. Student resources, including promoting positive behaviors, reteaching expectations, restorative practices, conflict management tactics, root cause of behavior, reviewing handbook and policies with students and engaging students in school communication. Next steps. We will continue to offer courageous conversation about race, which is our mandated professional development for our district. We'll continue DELF and lead sessions in February. We will continue to facilitate focus groups and observations that identify school with creation of school-based action plans. We will continue district-wide collaborative committee to update code of conduct for the 2022-2023 school year. We have several meetings planned. We sent out invitations to all such parties. The first citywide discipline committee meeting will take place Wednesday, February 16th on Zoom from 4:30 to 6:30. The next meeting will take place Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022 from 4:30 to 6:30 on Zoom. And the meeting following that will take place Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022, 4:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. And our last and final meeting will take place Wednesday, March 9th, 2022 from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. Upon conclusion of the Citywide Discipline Committee meeting, we will bring back to the board the suggestions and findings for any such adjustment to our district student code of conduct. We will continue to push out documentary viewing with school nurses, and our community conversations will take place February 9th, 2022 at 6 p.m. We want to encourage every community member to please attend. Has been advertised. Anything the PACE committee or the board can do to help us push that out there. We're looking forward to community input. We're looking forward to community collaboration, and we're looking forward to community partnership. With that being said, I will now pass off the second half of our presentation. Our presentation of the month will focus on our school social workers and all of the wonderful work that they have done and will continue to do in the Milwaukee Public Schools. So at this time, I will pass it over to Ms. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Boswell. We're here to talk a little bit about how school social workers are addressing disproportionality and our direct work with students and families. Also, all school social workers attended the Courageous Conversation About Race Exploration Seminar in October. There are 185 school social workers participating in year-long professional learning community, engaging in a Courageous Conversation About Race book study within small groups. The social work department reflected on the district enrollment and discipline data and determined that we needed to be intentional about isolating race as it impacts our work with our students and families. This includes acknowledging the need for conversations about race, equity, access, and inclusion. Our department was purposeful in making a 3-year commitment to furthering this work, as we know that implicit bias takes time to learn, and we know it takes much time to unlearn. Our next steps was to develop a plan of action, which aligns with moving towards the acting quadrant of the Courageous Conversation Compass. These are the action steps that the school social work department took toward equity and inclusion. In 2019-2020, we decided to do a book study as part of our new PLC redesign. The school social work administration team began a conversation about which book will lay the foundation of our work. The PLC group dynamic was created intentionally by mixing staff races, ages, and genders to create a safe space for cross-racial dialogue. We divided our staff into 19 PLC groups of about 9 or 10 staff each. In 2020, 2021, we recognized the need for a racially rich group to lead the work, including some staff with previous experience doing equity, diversity, and inclusion work. We reached out to those school social workers with previous experience and other school social workers that expressed interest in the work. Through this outreach, the School Social Work Equity Committee was formed. The vision of the Equity Advisory Committee strives to ignite our school social work department in a collective effort to understand and promote equity throughout all programs, practices, policies, and decisions. The mission of the Equity Advisory Committee aims to provide education, information, and resources, in addition to ongoing support and leadership around equity to the school social work department. In 2021, 2022, the next step in our commitment to this work was providing a one-day courageous conversation about race professional development that all school social work staff attended in October 2021. We chose Courageous Conversation About Race to begin the intentional discussion of isolating race. We are incorporating the Courageous Conversation Compass into all of our staff meetings. This allows us to collectively better understand how our varied beliefs and learned behavior impacts our work. Additionally, we created a safe space for discussion of race, equity, access, and inclusion in our monthly school social work assistant meetings. These conversations provided a rich dialogue about how race impacts their direct service to our students and families. As part of our 3-year commitment to the anti-race work in our schools, we redesigned our PLC format to include a book study each of the 3 years. We chose a book study for our PLC format based on experience of favorable feedback from school social workers and other district staff who participated in violence prevention program after school book studies and other district professional development. When you begin any equity and race work, you have to start by looking at where the inequity started. We chose the book Educated Milwaukee, How One City's History of Segregation and Struggle Shaped Its Schools as our first book study. It is written by James Nelson, Social Studies Department Chair at Golda Meir School. Mr. Nelson follows Milwaukee's educational history and what he describes as 3 errors: no choice, forced choice, and school choice. And how, in spite of having numerous school choices now, our Black and Brown students still struggle to succeed and stay in school. He chronicles how competing visions of equity and excellence have played out in our schools, even through today. We felt that this educational history of our city is necessary for our staff to better understand how institutional racism has impacted our families' educational outcomes and overall well-being. This year, our discussion continues. We chose the book Courageous Conversation About Race as it aligns with the district initiative to practice these conversations. Each month, 1 to 2 PLC members signed up to facilitate 2 chapters. We have facilitation sign-up sheets to ensure a space for all voices to be heard so that all staff can take ownership of the work. All school social workers have access to the Courageous Conversation About Race Google Classroom for activities and resources, as well as the Courageous Conversation About Race Exploration Google site to assist with facilitation. We know that in order to make real change, our staff has to become more comfortable in being uncomfortable in these conversations with peers and staff when addressing disparities. This PLC format helps to facilitate that dialogue. What's next for 2022-2023 school year? Well, our next book hasn't been officially decided, but we want to be purposeful in continuing the anti-race work. This requires reflection and discussion about next steps. We know that this is ongoing work and that our learned behaviors can impact the work we do. The cross-racial dialogue that occurs in our PLCs sets the foundation for self-reflection and strengthens our courage to challenge injustices when we see it in our professional practices. Therefore, we are making some departmental necessary changes. As previously noted, we developed the School Social Work Equity Committee. Additionally, the Special Education Evaluation Parent Interview Guide was intentionally updated to include verbiage that is more culturally responsive, inclusive, and trauma sensitive. During our behavior intervention team meetings, we are having courageous conversation when we note and notice data patterns of disproportionality to ensure that all our students are receiving appropriate interventions. Furthermore, we revamped our school social work interview questions in order to identify potential candidates whose values and beliefs promote social change and equity of opportunity. Finally, we collaborated with the Department of Equity, Access, and Inclusion to advocate for systemic policies and procedures that are inclusive of all NPS students.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Annan, and I am a school social work supervisor. So I want to thank Christina for highlighting the social workers' ongoing journey regarding our equity work. I'm going to highlight some of our PLC work specifically. And as we previously stated, the social work department has about 19 PLCs this year committed to the facilitation of the courageous conversations about race discussion and action. Each social worker signs up to co-facilitate 2 chapters of the Courageous Conversations About Race book. As Christina noted, social workers have access to the Courageous Conversations About Race Google Classroom and Exploration site to provide rich activities to engage all participants in the discussion. Finally, social workers facilitate each PLC in a restorative format to create a space for equity for all voices. Here is a snapshot of Team Dandy's facilitation of Chapter 3, which was titled Why Race, and Chapter 4, which was titled Agreeing to Talk About Race. I understand the names of these teams are generated electronically, so they have a few unusual team names. But as you can see, they included a picture of all their members in a restorative circle on their PowerPoint to make sure that even in this virtual setting, all voices have equal power. Courageous Conversation About Race always has you start with the first 4 agreements, which is part of the Courageous Conversations About Race protocol. First 4 are stay engaged, experience discomfort, speak your truth, and expect and accept non-closure. This particular team added another agreement, challenge by choice, to personalize their community safe space. These agreements have been established to guide difficult conversations. I share this next slide with you because the professional learning community recognized during their meetings, this particular professional learning community recognized in their meetings that they needed to get to know each other better to create a safe space for discussion. Therefore, they decided a few more get-to-know-you activities were necessary to create an inclusive, safe space. Again, they used the restorative circle format to make sure everyone's voices was heard. In this slide, this group used a simple question to spark greater dialogue about why isolating race and having racial conscious mindset is important in one's own personal journey. Each person was encouraged to share their thoughts in a restorative format. In aligning with the district efforts to address disproportionality, Team Dandy used district data to guide conversations about how implicit bias impacts our students of color. They asked some simple questions about the data. What do you notice? What questions do you have? And how does this impact your work? As noticed in the previous slide, one of the agreements is to expect and accept non-closure. However, a closing question brings the community back together. In this case, the closing question was to share a favorite winter activity. Closing the discussion can be as important as the discussion itself. People should feel that their contribution has been worthwhile and that you are really interested in them as people in the community. Thank you.
That concludes our presentation, and we are prepared to answer any questions that you may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Because we have the social workers on, I'll go to the committee if you guys have any questions or comments for them, and then we'll go to the public testimony on item number 1. I just don't want us to kind of cross the line. So committee members, do you guys have any questions or comments in reference of the social workers? Director Simpson.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. I just really wanted to thank the presenters for the social work department. What a great overview of the things that you're doing, the kind of like actionable steps that I think sometimes people are left wondering about, like what specifically is being done. And this is a perfect example, I think, of what community members are looking for. And I would just encourage administration to, continue bringing individuals forward, because I think when you can look at specific steps that are being taken, and this kind of detail, it kind of helps you understand a little bit better the depth of the work that's happening. So I don't have a specific question, but I just wanted to compliment the work that you're doing and encourage administration to continue bringing this type of reporting forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Simpson. Director or Vice Chair O'Halloran.
Thank you. I don't know if this is a question that the social workers would be able to answer, or if like longer term, I can just get an answer from administration. As we move into budget discussions, I was just wondering if we can get an update about current staffing levels as it pertains to social workers, our ability to attract and retain social workers, and just moving forward, like what our the student ratio to support services is, because I think not just our social workers, but this is something we frequently hear from students, just making sure that they have access to the support staff that they need. And I did also want to say thank you for not just going through the steps that you took, but also to the group that shared their slides with us and sharing it with us publicly. I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And for administration, I do think that is some information you guys can get over to Vice Chair O'Halloran and probably the whole committee, those numbers in reference to the social worker number to ratio in an email or something of that matter.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, we will be more than happy to do so, but I would like to report that as of now, we are fully staffed within the social work department. We have one position, and that position is being filled as we speak. That person is in the process of hiring right now and will be on board very soon. So, but we will get that for the board window as well.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you. That's great to hear. See that we're hiring for everything else that the social workers are for. President Peterson, thank you for joining us tonight. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. And I want to second the praise that was given to the social worker presentation. It's the kind of specificity that is really helpful to get us thinking about what could be done in different schools or different groups of employees. I was just curious if it's not too difficult. I just have a question. There was talk in the presentation about isolating race at different times in conversations. And I was wondering, as social workers, if you could just give an example of what that might look like in a conversation amongst social workers in a particular PLC.
Thank you. Administration.
Go ahead.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, my name is Christina Hall. I'm a school social work supervisor. In our PLCs, we are looking at data and how like our implicit bias, depending on like your race and who you are, can impact how you are working with students. And so we are taking the time to look at who we are, doing some self-reflection for some of our social workers, and then trying to see if we can kind of check some of that unconscious bias to make sure that the interventions that we are working with students and what we're implementing is appropriate when we are thinking about race and ecological factors.
Thank you. Thank you. That's fine.
That's it. All right. Any other committee members have any questions or comments for the social workers or social worker supervisor? Seeing none, I would like to say as well, with the rest of my colleagues, thank you all for coming on tonight. Thank you for giving us the detail in the presentation and numbers to go with it. And thank you for your continued work with our babies and our families and other staff as we continue on in this post-pre-COVID world. The work that you do is vitally important. Madam Secretary, with that, I would like to hold off on questions for OCR from the committee and go right to public testimony, please.
So noted. The first individual on the platform registered to speak is Angela Harris. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Hi, yes, we can hear you.
Angela Harris, Harris.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Taylor, members of the committee. The district discipline data for the month of January is disappointing, but not surprising. At this point, it should really be embarrassing for the administration and the board to continue to present data that looks like this to the committee. If disproportionate discipline continues to be at pre-Office of Civil Rights complaint levels, it begs the question, what is really being done to create the systemic change to transform our discipline practices and our data? Courageous conversations about race and racial justice book studies can only be beneficial if information learned is actually applied. We know tons of white folks that have attended all types of racial justice book studies, fought for social justice, and still struggle with the discomfort of being called on their anti-Blackness and the ways they perpetuate white supremacy. What supports and resources are being made available to teachers as they begin to shift their thinking about discipline that are tangible and more intentional than a follow-up email with some resources? Consistently throughout the school year, Beck, Micah, and Arwie, as well as members of the community, have provided testimony suggestions for board accountability on this issue. Questions for accountability still remain unanswered. Imagine being asked by the community month after month after month for processes, procedures, tracking, metrics, and never receiving it. It's like being on a professional improvement plan and never improving. Last week, we celebrated Black Lives Matter as School Week of Action. The data in this district is a direct reflection about how we feel about our Black students. We have not as a district taken on the systems change or mindset shift that is required to change disproportionality. I mean, what real evidence does the board have that the work of dismantling the school to prison pipeline is actually taking place? Where's the proof that Black children's emotional and physical safety is being supported? Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform is Angela Lucas Foley. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Angela Lucas Foley, Lucasfoley.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Taylor, Board of Directors, and Administration. I am going to racialize my voice. As a white woman, a member of RWE, and a parent of 2 students in MPS, I believe our school system functions at its best when it is functioning for all students. Heather McGee in The Sum of Us states aptly, nothing about our situation is immutable, but you can't solve a problem with the consciousness that created it. Board Governance Policy 2.03 states in part that the board evaluates the effects of its district policies and the manner of their execution, as well as the routine operation of the schools by such means as observations, audits, and periodic reports by its executive officer. To this end, as a constituent, I am asking, how are you as a board evaluating the effects of current district policies and practices as it relates to the Office of Civil Rights Resolution? As a board, what observations of district policies and procedures have taken place during this school year? As a board, what audits of district policies and procedures have taken place during this school year? As a board, what evidence have you been provided that student voice is being centered and uplifted in a meaningful way? 150 student discipline meetings and 3 years of leadership summits are for naught if collective student perspective is lost. Perhaps most importantly, what evidence can be provided to the community regarding these outcomes? While important questions and accountability measures must be provided to us from administration, similar questions and accountability measures must be asked of you as our elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person on the platform to speak is Michelle Hilbert. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony. Okay. It looks
Is
as
she
if
on there?
Miss Hilbert dropped off, but she is logged back on.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Okay, Michelle Hilbert, Hilbert. And thank you. I am speaking on behalf of We Milwaukee. We have consistently pressed the Milwaukee School Board of Directors and Administration for more than a year, along with our partners, Black Educators Caucus Milwaukee, MICA, and Leaders Igniting Transformation for district-wide professional development on racism and bias. I'm glad to see there's been some progress on that. This work is a priority for us, and we will continue to monitor board items with a specific focus on that accountability and reflection. Last month's written and verbal testimony asked for this accountability from the Board of Directors. We asked for data to be shared at the grade band level as suggested or as asked and discussed by Director Leonard and Chair Taylor at the December 2021 PACE. Additionally, we made pointed questions about courageous conversations, the impacts and the numbers. We received a case number regarding this testimony, but we never received a response from administration nor a response from governance on the status of this. So we're asking if y'all could please follow up with that. And again, we are recognizing that board policy and duties explicitly state that there's a duty to evaluate the effectiveness of district policies and the manner of their execution, as well as the routine operation of the schools. To evaluate what's being done and to facilitate future planning. Given this dismal data report from January of 2022, which is merely a continuation of previous data reports, we refer back to those following questions. At January PACE, Director Halloran asked about what the greatest impediments to change are. What evidence does the board have that the administration is executing policies in a manner to promote change? What's the status of the 10 CAR practitioners? What examples of capacity building with these highly trained practitioners have been provided to the board? We're wondering about leads, who is part of that, and can the board and community be provided with a summary and of the scope and sequence of the work? And based on the monthly presentations, what actions are explicitly informed and transformed in changing problematic structures instead of shifting responsibility under that catch-all categories of problem students? The community is interested in all this information and look forward to response. Thank you for your time.
Madam Chair, it appears that that is the last individual on the platform scheduled to speak on this item tonight.
All right, I thought I heard 3. I thought you said 4, but okay.
Yes, and the other individual is not on the platform.
They're not. If they come on while we're still here, just let me know so we can capture that. I'll now go to committee members with any questions or comments in reference to item number 1 on the agenda tonight.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Members of the committee and for our listening audience, one of the speakers indicated that they had requested information from the Office of Board Governance on the OCR matter. The one request we did receive was that board members receive certain data, and board members all have received that data, and that incident is no longer open in the Office of Board Governance. Every constituent concern that we've received has received a response, and it has been sent to the Office of Board Governance so that we could close out the matter in the event that there was question about the data being shared. So I just want to be sure that the Office of Board Governance has received requests, has fulfilled those requests, and closed out the concerns.
All right, and Madam Secretary, just for listening audience and for us too, so that we're all on the same page, the information and the data was sent back to board members, and I know there is we have to be careful what information and data we can give out in reference to our students, to the public. Is there any way that you can work with the administration as well too, to make sure that those that ask the questions were able to receive answers? I know we may not be able to send all of it, but that the information that can be public as far as the data that was asked, they are able to receive?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, that information has already been shared. Relative to data, it was published in the last OCR report. There was a specific request that board members receive a copy of the responses that was sent to individuals requesting information from the administration. The administration has responded, and when we received that information, we shared it with each of the board members, not just the ones on the PACE committee. So at this point, there's no additional request for information that is outstanding relative to OCR with the Office of Board Governance.
And one more thing, Madam Secretary, and thank you for this.
No problem.
Because we did have some of the questions tonight, and I did see some of the comments, but not all of those. Can we ensure too, for those that sent in questions and comments, that there's a response from board governance as well too? And I can talk with you more offline on that as well.
So noted.
Thank you. All right. Committee members, any questions or comments in reference to item number 1? Vice Chair O'Halloran.
Thank you. It's not something that was necessarily covered tonight, but it's related, I think, tangentially to the OCR report. I was wondering if we could get an update on restorative practices. We had added some positions through the last budget, and I know that some of them are still posted and we're in the process of hiring. Just looking ahead at the upcoming budget cycle, once again, just how we're doing on the positions. If we inadvertently added positions that instead of a coach, maybe a coordinator might have been better, I would welcome that input. And just how their efforts have been going this year and how that reaches down into the schools. And also, I just wanted to say thank you. I followed up with a student from Reagan, and they confirmed that you all reached out to her. And so thank you for helping this student complete their project. And thank you just for taking the time to hear from our students about their concerns.
Thank you. Administration, on the follow-up or a question regarding the restorative practices and where we're at with the hiring and the numbers and as such.
Chair Taylor and members of the committee, I want to first start by reiterating again that we have completed all assignments, all tasks, and anything that's been asked of the administration has been completed and passed along to the Office of Board Governance, such as Dr. Manners just shared. I would also like to share with you that we will be more than happy to get you a list of, where we are with the hiring process, and ask that question. Adria Maddalini is here, and I've asked that question. We asked that question around, should we change some of the positions or look at some of the positions in a different way? We will be able to respond to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Will she be responding now?
Director Taylor, Chair Taylor, Director O'Halloran, Adria Maddalini, Chief Human Resources Officer. Just to provide some context on our hiring, we currently have budgeted 12 positions for restorative practices coaches. 4 are vacant that we're currently in process of filling, and we have a supervisor position that we're currently in the interview process for, and hopefully that will get filled soon. We're open to look at considerations of there's better ways to fill these positions or maybe title them. We're open, and in the budget process, happy to work with the department to look at that and make sure we're effectively using these positions.
Thank you. Vice Chair O'Halloran, you still have the floor. Any follow-up?
Oh, no, I thank you to administration for providing that detail. I know I've also asked this, and I was able to get some of this information, but going forward, can we just hear, not necessarily tonight, I just wanted to hear about how it's been going this year, what, just more detail around the efforts and, any way that the board can support that, because that is something that comes up both from students and staff and in the community, how we can practice, do the restorative practices probably more effectively.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair Heller. And also, I know we had allocated in the budget, maybe the previous year as well, the trauma-informed care specialist, as well as curriculum for that. If we can't get that information tonight, I think it'd be something great that probably can go out to the whole board and also to those individuals that be speaking, because we often talk about that as well in relates to OCR for administration. I see Director Simpson first and then Director Leonard.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. So, one thing I think that's important to kind of think about in terms of when we talk about staffing is just when we look at all of the training and community conversations that go into building that school community, we have to look at staff stability, and I think they really go hand in hand. So when we think about budgeting for these positions as we move towards the next budget cycle, I think filling those vacancies is important, but also looking at stability of staff is something that we should really look at, because to get to that point of staff stability and common language and school community, we have to keep our teachers where they are and in the same buildings, which I know has been a priority of this administration. So I just want to thank you for that and acknowledge that that's work we have to continue. I was looking at the report that was given to us where it spoke to the meetings that were done by the school-based discipline work groups, and it commented in there that one of the most common themes that was raised about next steps was addressing the PBIS framework. So I was just wondering, what is how many, if we have a PBIS coach, how many schools does that coach oversee in terms of getting updates and training in PBIS, since that seems to be something that schools are looking for?
Administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, John Jagman, District Discipline Manager. There are currently 5 PBIS coaches and 1 PBIS supervisor. They are each assigned a geographic region and one in the high school, so they each have about 27, 29 schools that they coach and they support, and then they provide the professional development to those schools that are in that region.
Director Simpson, any follow-up, any questions or comments?
That's a lot of schools to cover. So maybe that's something that we can, when we think of budgeting and staffing, maybe that's something that we need to take a look at. Is there a way to kind of better support the PBIS program in our schools? And then I guess the only other question I had is, do we have an update on the percentage of staff that's participated in the Courageous Conversation?
Administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, we have had about a little over 2,000 staff members attend. I believe we are looking at around 9,000 staff members in the district. So quick math here is just about 20% of staff have attended Courageous Conversation about race.
Okay, thank you. And again, I know this is mandatory, it's something that everybody will do. But I know I also understand the impatience of kind of wanting to get that done as quickly as possible. So thank you for that update and how many staff have participated so far.
Before I go to Director Leonard, and I'm trying not to really talk from the chair, I know we said 20% for Courageous, and I'll go to Director Leonard, but I want administration to think on this and then give me an answer. Coming from the district as being an employee as well too, there were trainings and workshops that was mandatory. I'm just gonna be honest, some of it I felt like could have been an email, but something like this, I believe, is something that maybe can be instituted on one of them days, or an hour of that professional development or training that is mandatory, and not to like overlap or put more work, because I know it's already been a stressful year, but I don't know if that's something that we can think about to ensure that the percentage goes up more than 20% when we have a district of over maybe 10,000 employees.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, thank you for that. I'll add a few points to that. One, we have been utilizing all of those professional development days, and we've been matching our services with the services of the vendor. So like school social workers, they had multiple sessions on that day. We've done a couple of other than PD days. Upcoming on April 5th, we're also going to be offering some sessions for staff members to sign up through LMS. And then going into the next school year, we are working with the New Educator Institute to have all new educators attend that one-day session as part of their onboarding. So we're working to engage all currently hired staff members, but we want to get to that point going forward that then we are just kind of capturing newly hired staff members as part of their New Educator Institute one day there. So right now we're just kind of trying to get those back pieces, and then going forward we'll have that system for new staff members.
Thank you. I have Director Leonard and then President Peterson in that order. Director Leonard, you have the virtual floor.
Thank you, Director Taylor. Sort of a big ask, I guess, but I'm going to try to push this either way. So I was looking at the 150 meetings of the School-Based Student Discipline Committee. And I was looking at their most concerned main themes and all the information you put in those paragraphs. But actually, is it possible that we can set some meetings up at the schools where we can actually talk with them directly? I just think that that would be just a much more, they would be more informative for me than any other group of people, to be honest.
Absolutely. Administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, John Jagman, District Discipline Manager. So yes, one, we can work with governance to arrange that through the proper channels and everything. Also, additionally, we have identified the schools with the most suspensions, and we are going in and kind of doing a root cause analysis. One of those is going to be to have multiple focus groups with students, and we're going to have the school strategically identify students who have experienced the discipline process, maybe some students who feel less engaged at the school, and engage them in those focus groups there as well. So we can work with governance to how that works through the systems to engage you with that as well.
Yeah. And just to add additionally, Matthew Boswell, Senior Director of the Department of Student Services, as well, we will be lineaging community resources to those schools that are experiencing higher suspension rates. So we have now identified several community organizations that will come in and provide mentoring, that will also come in and provide conflict resolution, and also will come in and provide a slew of services at the schools in which Mr. Jagman has mentioned. So that is our next steps in this process.
Thank you. Director Leonard, you still have the floor.
No, that's good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. President Peterson.
Yes, I'm impressed with all the people who are working with their students, the 185 social workers, the fact that we're trying to increase restorative practice folks, the trauma-informed educators. I was wondering if the administration could talk about two other groups that are very important for our students' mental health, which are the psychologists and the school counselors, and if you have any numbers, how many we have, and if there are any openings amongst those two groups.
Administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, we can get additional information on staffing and their work, but I can attest to all school psychologists, all school counselors have also engaged in the one-day courageous conversations of our race exploration. They're also both engaging and using the compass and the agreements within their work. The school social worker was the department that are doing the PLC book study, but both of those other two groups have had all of their staff go through the courageous conversations. They are also both represented. One of their supervisors are on that district discipline disproportionality team that meet once a month. And they will also both have a representative of this team that is going into these schools. So those three, psychs, social workers, and counselors do work together as part of this group that is looking out to support the school.
Chair Taylor and members of the committee, also just to add with our school psychologists, we are fully staffed at this time with school psychologists. So they are on board. And with our school counselors, we are at 10.3 with vacancies, and we have 10.3 vacancies out there that we are currently working on and trying to get filled at this time. But it's all hands on deck approach with both groups.
Thank you. President Peterson, any follow-up or any other questions or comments?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other committee members have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, just for the listening audience too, I will be speaking with our board governance just to make sure that those questions was answered. I know we did receive some emails as well from the administration with information. We just have to ensure what can be shared publicly, especially when it comes to our students and babies. So I want to thank you for that. Madam Secretary, next item.
Madam Chair, that was the last item on tonight's agenda.
Big one. All right. So thank you all for tuning in to February's PACE meeting. Have a great night. Make sure you take care of yourself and take care of others.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be down, Dr. Mann.
Okay.
Okay.
Recording stopped.